constitutional attorney Katherine Henry. So we've been talking about this. I was driving through the Smoky Mountains talking to you on the phone, cell phone service in and out, and you were on the beautiful beach of Florida the other day, right?
Oh, yeah. My favorite place to be.
But your heart's still in Michigan too, right?
Well, I have 2 of our kids still living there, and my parents live there, and his parents live there, and my baby sister lives there, my grandma, so Michigan is, besides the fact that I was born there and he was raised there, I gave birth to one of my children there. So yeah, it's Michigan's always going to be home to me.
Cool. So you're doing a lot to fight for just literally freedom, like your group's called Restore Freedom, right?
Yep.
And this is more of a firearms channel, Second Amendment channel, but this all ties together. So here's what's been going on basically for all of you guys who are just now joining, or if you've been under a rock. We have what's called bureaucracy in this country, right? The ATF, otherwise known as the AFT. Now we also have Congress. And the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, says that Congress makes laws. And then we have an executive branch, which is headed by, normally it's the president, but in this case, the former vice president runs the executive branch. And we also have a judiciary branch, which is to judge laws and decide if they're constitutional, amongst other things that have to do with civil conflict, disputes between states. But we're supposed to have a constitutional republic, not a monarchy. And this is what brings it to what's going on right now. We have the ATF literally promulgating rules and regulations. One of them is they're going to, quote, ban these 80% receivers, which is not a firearm, but somebody could use it to build a firearm for their own purposes later. And they're just coming through saying, well, now we're going to reinterpret the Gun Control Act of 1968. We're going to reinterpret the National Firearms Act. And in many cases, literally change words of the actual legislation, and then they put it up in front of public comment pursuant to the APA, right? The Administrative Procedures Act. People leave comments. It doesn't matter what people say. Then they come back and say, now we have ruled. We have decided that our ruling is constitutional. And then we're going to come in as police officers and potentially kick in doors and confiscate items. That's basically where we're at right now. So where do you want to start with this whole topic? Because it's literally insane.
Oh, well, I guess it's, yeah, there's a lot going on. I guess, so one of the main things that stuck out to me, so, because it is kind of like a chicken and the egg discussion, but, you've probably talked about the Chevron deference, assuming in prior videos.
Yes.
And essentially with that being that, administrative agencies are allowed to interpret any ambiguities in the laws that they enforce. So, there's, you can't have an administrative agency having, the interpretation of some rule that has nothing to do with their purpose. You can't have MDHHS, for example, interpreting something that has something to do with firearms, because Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has nothing to do with firearms, right? So we're talking about, in this case, the ATF would only have authority to interpret, any ambiguities in federal law as it relates to the purview of what the ATF deals with. But when it comes to, so basically, the case is saying the jurisprudence on this has said, well, it's only applicable where, these agencies can only jump in and interpret in a situation where the statute, the federal law itself there's an ambiguity. There's a point where it's not clear. Mm-hmm. And this might be a crazy notion and all, but any ambiguity, in my opinion, any ambiguity in any law should always be construed in the manner most favorable to, the people, to our God-given liberties. There should be deference given to us enjoying our individual liberties over some government being able to have some red tape on top of things that they don't have the right to tape up for us. I mean,
well, I agree. And then more specifically with these statutes, they're actually very, very clear. And in most people's opinion, there's not even any ambiguity at all. But I like how you said that. If there were to be ambiguity, why would they be able to narrow it down to restrict us further, right?
Right. So basically, when it comes down to it, we all have heard, even if nobody's, big on politics and they're just checking out your channel for the first time and they have never heard me speak, you've at least heard of due process. So, um, anyway, there's no, I would say, there's no due process involved when you have laws being made where there's any kind of ambiguity, because if it's not clear what the law is doing at the onset, then how could it possibly be enforced equally? So you have a 14th Amendment equal protection issue. You have a whole due process claim. There's no process that's properly being followed if there's stuff that's not quite defined very well in a statute. And that's not just at the federal level. I mean, that'd be at any level. But I'm trying to make sure I don't jump too far ahead of myself, because we have kind of a lot of different offshoots of this topic. But
And I will say this real quick before we go any further. The ATF has literally written approval letters for these products that are made by a company called Polymer 80. And they wrote approval letters just a couple years ago saying, this is totally good. It totally complies and conforms to all federal gun laws. So companies went out, invested millions of dollars, tooled up, made these products with an approval letter, and then people in good faith with a letter from the ATF saying it was fine, bought all these items. Now we have, again, the former vice president comes in and says, nope, now I'm going to direct them to say that it's not good after we told all these people it was and they spent all their money. Now, what does that do to complicate it even further?
Well, I actually wasn't even anticipating on that coming into the conversation, but off the top of my head, I want to say that is, Article 1, Section 10. I'm going to just look really quick here. Article 1, Section 9. I think. No, it probably is. Yeah, it is Section 10. I shouldn't have doubted myself there. I want to say the Michigan Constitution is also Article 1, Section 10, I believe. But anyway, that there should be no law, there should be no bill of attainder or ex post facto law or any law impairing the obligation of contracts. So when you have a situation where, any piece in the economy, if you have a manufacturer, there's going to be retailers, there's going to be distributors, there's going to be suppliers, there's going to be customers at the far end of that continuum of merchandising. So if they are changing the rules of the game midstream, I would say that's a definite violation of Article 1, Section 10, because there should be no law that impairs the obligation of contracts. And, ex post facto law, you're saying something is now illegal that was not illegal when people started to do this. You can't say all of a sudden, oh, but you did that, and now we're going to say it's a violation of law. Those are basic concepts that shouldn't, quite frankly, have to even be in the Constitution. It should just be so common sense that, people would follow that. But I think it's important, too, to realize that, like you said, in this situation, the law the piece of the law that they're talking about is pretty clear. While we have administrative agencies like the ATF trying to rewrite the law all the time.
Yes.
And they're not allowed to do that. Statutes cannot be changed or overwritten by any kind of administrative agency. So, that's something we kind of need to pay attention to, because this day and age, we're just used to these administrative agencies and government, alphabet soup and all that. They're all getting to do whatever they want to do, especially at the federal government, but even at the state level. But, the other issue is that administrative agencies should not even be allowed to promulgate their own set of rules. This is my take on it. In a way that those rules would serve to be an additional layer of regulation of the people. So if you have an administrative agency that's setting out their own rules and they're trying to make things uniform for the employees in that branch or that agency of that part of government. That makes sense. Okay, you're going to have procedural process, things that are in a process or procedure that need to be done in a standard way. Okay, you can make rules about how that's done. It's basically like your office manual.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But when you have administrative agencies making these rules that whether they jump through a bunch of hoops or not, like through the APA or anything like that, and then all of a sudden these rules, well, now because they've jumped through all these hoops and the people had their open hearing and all this other, their time for notice and comment, all of a sudden these rules are now going to be adopted and treated like they are law. I have a huge problem with that because the laws should be just the law and that's it. There shouldn't be, well, the law is actually the law plus this thing, plus that thing, administrative rules and regulations, plus what judges do, plus, all these other pieces. No, the law should actually just be what the law is. And I'm pretty sure our Constitution was clear about who is the body or, set of individuals that gets to make law.
Right.
Sure
So, yeah, and they spelled it out. They said we would have a lower chamber, which is the House of Representatives, and we would have an upper chamber, which is the United States Senate. And I'm watching the chat out of the corner of my eye right now. And look, I get it, guys. Like, it's driving us nuts too. They're like, but hold on a minute. But if Congress makes law, then how is the ATF in this case? They're literally going into law, which, by the way, all gun control laws are unconstitutional, period. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. If we want to use case precedent with the Supreme Court, Marbury v. Madison said all laws that are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. With that said, we're in a reality today where we, the people, have allowed ourselves to be under 24,000 something odd end federal gun control laws. It's literally that crazy. But even that's not enough. They're literally going in now and they're taking a word and they'll change a word that's in the law and they'll change it to another word that has an opposite meaning, publish it as a rule, claim it's Chevron deference, and the original succinct words that people have been making their livelihoods on, we've been exercising our freedom based upon, and they're literally just changing words now. It's gotten that bad. And that's a huge problem, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my head wants to explode with all the different red flags that are going off with what you've just said. So, one of the other notes that I made just a few notes to prepare for this episode today because there is so much to talk about. I wanted to make sure that we hammered on some of the things that are important, even though most of the people that listen to me regularly or listen to you regularly, they know this by now, but it's important enough points that we should keep underscoring them. So the next one in that sense would be, I would argue there actually should be no administrative agencies at all. The whole alphabet soup that we have. So where in the Constitution does it allow an entire government agency to be created to regulate alcohol, tobacco, or firearms?
It's true.
I don't know. I mean, I got the Declaration, I got the Constitution, I got, my pocket Constitution, I got everything around. I'm not seeing a single word that says that any branch can establish an administrative body, an agency of the government, whether it be CIA, FBI, ATF, Department of Education, any of them. It probably sounds like a tinfoil hat theory because we're so used to the government being what it is, but there's no authority in the Constitution to create those agencies. So without an express permission given to create one of those agencies, then there is no permission. You can't imply some permission to create a whole government agency. And without that permission, the agency is not constitutionally in existence. So if you go back to Marbury versus Madison, or you look at Article 6, Clause 2 of our U.S. Constitution itself, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and only the laws that Congress makes that are in pursuance of the Constitution, that follow the Constitution, only those are the laws that should stand or can stand. So, making a law like the Administrative Procedures Act, for example, that, as long as there's a law that says all these agencies can exist and here's what they can do and here's how they do it, then all of a sudden, okay, they checked all the boxes, they're good to go. Well, no, because the Congress didn't have the right to create that law and bestow that authority upon some agency in the first place anyway. They didn't have the right to do it. We're just so used to having all these alphabet soup government agencies that were like, oh, well, yeah, of course we have all these, but it shouldn't be that way.
And that's why I wanted to have you on, because no, it doesn't sound crazy to me at all. And my viewers are really smart. I think most people watch and get it, but we need to pass this on and remind people. The Constitution was written very simply for a reason. You don't really need to be a lawyer to understand it. It's very clear, right? And it says in the Declaration of Independence, which is one of my favorite works by our founding fathers, it literally says in there that the government would be instituted among men. And the only reason they would even exist at all was protect our natural rights. These are rights that were endowed by your creator. And that's the sole purpose that we would even have a government. And now we have them making agencies that are there to put in red tape, usurp the people's rights, scare people with prison sentences, go back and forth on their word. That sounds like the country that we declared independence from, with the monarchy in Great Britain, doesn't it?
Yeah, with its whole another layer of problems that weren't even in existence back then. I think there's a lot of it, and so I guess, yeah, I would take it. You kind of referenced this earlier, but I would take it a step further in this discussion of, the ATF, or I said the ATF has no authority to make laws, and then I was saying, well, but there shouldn't even be administrative agencies at all. But the next point after that, which you already alluded to, was how about the fact that Congress has no authority to regulate alcohol, tobacco, or firearms themselves either. It's not just that they can't allow some other administrative agency to do that, but where in the Constitution does it allow them to regulate any of those things? In fact, the only place that it talks about firearms or anything like that would be in the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment's pretty clear. I know most people know this by heart, but a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. How much easier could it be? You can't make a law that it intrudes upon our God-given liberties. Now, if somebody is using a weapon to go out and commit murder, okay, that's a whole nother thing. But just owning a gun, or owning parts of guns, or selling guns, buying whatever, how is that? None of that should ever be a crime. That's in the law. We look at things that are what makes a crime, and you have malum prohibitum and malum per se. So you have things that are wrong because morality is prohibiting it's basic human decency. For example, you can't go and assault somebody and beat them up, because in any culture that just would not be okay. You can't murder, those kinds of things. The government is going to come in and do something about it, no matter what country you're from. Yeah. But you also then, and this is where the US has 95% of their laws. Some things are just bad just because someone has said it's bad, just because the government has told us it's bad. Oh, well, you didn't file your XYZ form with your income taxes, so now the Internal Revenue Code says that you've committed this felony, or there's you didn't file this paperwork when you purchased this gun, so now you've done whatever. It's just, it goes on and on. So you have laws that are actually wrong in and of themselves. And you have the laws that the government just made up this law. And so it's only wrong just because the people have said it's wrong through their legislatures. So I don't know. It's the whole concept that Congress doesn't even have the right. Nowhere in there does it talk about, in all of Article 1, or anywhere in the Constitution. But if you read the whole thing, I don't see anywhere where it says, okay, Congress, go ahead and regulate alcohol. or tobacco or firearms. In fact, I'm pretty sure the opposite is what's said in here, in the Second Amendment. But it kind of brings us back to, we're back full circle now. Think about then back to the Chevron deference. Okay, so you have a whole lot of judicial interpretation and administrative agency interpretation of statutes, right? That's the whole point of the Chevron deference, is basically administrative agencies interpreting, or the judges coming in and interpreting. Whose interpretation gets to win out? Well, there's no constitutional authority for any of these entities to interpret our laws. We've taken for granted that that's just what happens. That's how it's done. But nowhere in there, I mean, the word interpret is nowhere in the U.S. Constitution. So how is it that, over 200 years of jurisprudence has shown us that, well, judges obviously have the right to interpret statutes and then make up all these rules and laws, case law about, okay, well, is there an establishment of religion? Oh, well, the Lemon v. Kurtzman case says you have to look at this, this, and this, or, is this agency allowed to do X, Y, Z? Oh, well, the Chevron case, says there's this, this, and this. Like, even the judges are not allowed to interpret statutes. We're supposed to interpret statutes. I mean, we the people.
Right.
So at any rate, that all brings us then to back around to the first point that we talked about, that if there are any ambiguities in a law whatsoever, well, they should be enforced in the manner most favorable to the American people, utilizing their God-given liberties. We didn't get our freedom from the government. The government has no authority to just take it away. And then somehow we've kind of succumbed to that and just, oh, okay, fine. You want to take my liberty? Okay, fine. I'll accept that. Why? That's not even how our government's supposed to be.
No, it's only supposed to be there to protect those natural rights, and it's supposed to be there at the consent of the people, literally, right?
Exactly. So, I'm going to be labeled as a conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to go out on the limb and say, yeah, the director of the ATF shouldn't be doing what they're doing. They shouldn't be having all these secret procedures and policies and things like that. I mean, that's a whole other due process issue.
That's another issue they've been doing, where there's a set of rules they post to the public, and then they have internal memos that they give to their agents and say, bust them if they do this. So you don't even know if you're breaking the law until they already have you arrested. I mean, it's literally gotten that that much perversion of what their intent was even supposed to be through the APA, as crazy as that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's something that's like, for those of you who might have known about me since Mike and I met almost 2 years ago now, that, I was doing several things to fight for freedom. But one of the things that I was doing was I had written a constitutional amendment to get signatures for a petition to get us on the ballot for changing the Michigan state constitution. And one of the things that I did in this amendment was to, eliminate all that alphabet soup crap, and to say that the legislators themselves actually have to write the bills, and putting judges back in their place, and then having some sort of actual tangible, way to back up all of that. So right now, 18 USC section 241 says that if you have a conspiracy, if you have, more than one person conspiring to impact or stop or thwart the exercise of someone's constitutionally protected rights, then that's a federal offense. It's a felony. You can have, I want to say, up to 10 or 15 years in prison, but you can also receive the death penalty in certain circumstances for doing that. That's a federal statute. It's a federal crime already, what any of these guys are doing. But there's no teeth to it. Nobody's utilizing that.
We call that deprivation of rights under color of law, usually, right?
Yep. So, and that kind of works more hand in hand with 42 USC section 1983, that a lot of people more think about that because it's like the the civil remedy to go after and sue, a government agency for stepping outside of its bounds. But yeah, I would say this goes beyond that, because we have entire government agencies that constitutionally have no bounds because they shouldn't even be in existence. So this topic is just, it's something else, because it kind of shows exactly where we're at and how many problems we have. I mean, it's not just one branch. The legislatures, state and federal, have been pointing the finger at the executive branch, or at times the judicial branch, saying, well, you can't do that. For example, in Michigan, the state legislature has been constantly saying for 2 years now, well, of course the governor can't issue these executive orders. But their argument is because they are the ones that are allowed to control our every move and squash our constitutionally protected God-given liberties. And that's what the Supreme Court of Michigan focused on in the 2020 case that essentially got rid of the governor's executive orders in Michigan. It was all over a power play. We're just fighting about who has the power to make all these rules or laws or mandates for the people to close their businesses or to do whatever, have stay at home. There were curfews and things like that. You weren't supposed to leave your house and all that stuff. Well, we shouldn't be fighting about who gets to do it, because the truth is, no one has the right to do that to us, whether it's the people that are supposed to be there to make laws in general, or whether it's somebody there that's supposed to be applying the law to particular facts or a particular case, and that would be the judicial branch, or whether it's the executive branch, where they're just supposed to be enforcing the laws that Congress has put into place. I mean, no matter how you slice it, it's just such a...
Well, the way I understand the founding documents, if you go back to why would we have a government at all? And one of the Federalist papers, Madison, Federalist, he actually believed in more federal government than some of the founding fathers did. But even him wanted way less than we have now. And he had that famous letter where he said, look, if men were angels, we'd need no government at all. But since men are not angels, we're going to need a government, meaning the government was only supposed to be put there to protect your natural God-given rights from each other. So if a petty tyrant down the street thought he could just come in and kill your family to take over the rest of the street, the government would be there to protect you from that. But then he went on further and he said, but if government were angels, right, we would need no internal or external controls on that government. But since government are not angels, we're going to need both internal checks and balances and external. And that's where we, the people, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to a free state. So it's kind of crazy when you think about, why do we even have a government at all? It's supposed to be to protect our rights, right?
Exactly. And I think, that's something that's important, that people, even, NRA members and other, huge gun activists and
Gun
things
Owners
like
of America.
Yeah, everybody that's out there, I think the piece of the conversation that is often missing is not talking about just that part that says shall not be infringed, but backing it up to the middle of the sentence there, saying that this is a need. It's necessary for the security of a free state, and not state as in, an individual state, but for a free society is how that's, meant there. Any group of people coming together as a community with any kind of government system put into place at all. That's the definition of state as they're using it here. And so whether it's a country, whether it's an actual state, like we have the United States, whether it's a local government, it's us being able to have firearms, to, keep and bear arms, is something that is necessary to secure our freedom entirely. And so it's not even just, especially a lot of the Democrats, but even those that are conservative that argue, oh, well, this is a right that shall not be infringed. Okay, great. But they tell us why.
Yes.
Because we need to be able to defend ourselves against all this tyranny. And if we can't defend ourselves, then there's no freedom. There's nothing left to fight for. Why bother saying we have any of these rights if we have no way to defend those rights.
No, exactly. Because look, I hate him and everything about him, but I'm going to bring up Chairman Mao of China. He has a famous quote that said, all political power comes from the barrel of a gun. And he's actually correct. And as long as we have guns, we still have power. That's what the Second Amendment's alluding to. But the ATF, and that's where, let's bring them back into it again. They're unconstitutional. They even exist. All gun control laws are unconstitutional. The APA is unconstitutional. These current rules and regulations that they're writing and promulgating are unconstitutional. However, they have guns that we, the people, are paying for with our tax dollars. And if you remember horror stories like Waco, Texas, Ruby Ridge, they've been known to come with their guns and their tanks and their bombs and kill innocent women and children. And that's why they have the power, is because they have the guns and the force and effect of the federal government behind them, right?
Yeah. My brain just got stuck on the whole, naming off of incidents where it's okay for the ATF or other government agencies to come in and use their show of force, their firearm power, and to take away basic life, let alone liberty. Yeah. But it's not okay for us to do that, supposedly. And I think another point that people forget all the time, especially the people in government, especially the mainstream media, even in circles where we're talking about, the conservative discussions with 2 or 3 or more conservatives just discussing the topic, there's focus on who gets to have this power and who has the power. Is it, I was a guest speaker or a guest on somebody else's show in California on Sunday night this last weekend. And we were talking, it was 3 of us that are conservatives and constitutionalists. And yet there was so much discussion on, well, is it the state government or is it the federal government? And talking about, well, which government has the right to regulate us for any particular thing? And I had to kind of put the stop on the conversation and say, wait a minute. We're focusing on that, but isn't the focus supposed to be on our rights? We shouldn't be focusing so much on who, the ping pong, notion of, or hot potato of who's got the ability to regulate us. It should be about the focus on, what is the best way for us to each individually be able to enjoy our God-given liberties. Yeah. And some things are just not meant to be regulated. I mean, no matter what. I mean, you're always going to have a bad apple. You're always going to have somebody who's not doing the right thing. You don't take away the rights of other people just because this person over here has done something wrong. I mean, those concepts just don't make sense. But another piece to that puzzle is the concept of rights. Who has rights? We as individuals have rights, but we often hear people talk about, well, the government has the right, the president has the right, the governor has the right, the legislature has the right, the judicial branch has the right, or a judge has the right. None of those sentences that are started in those examples are true already, no matter how it ends, because nowhere in the Constitution is any governmental agency or any government branch or any government official given any rights. We, the people, have God-given liberties. Those are synonymous with saying we have rights. The Bill of Rights. We, as individuals, have rights. We, the people, have rights. The government, in any kind of capacity, at any level, in any stage of it, whether it's an alphabet soup thing or whatever, the ex-vice president, none of them have rights in that role because no constitution gives them any rights. The only thing that they're given sometimes is certain authorities to take certain actions. But again, if they weren't given authority to act in a certain capacity or to do a certain act by the Constitution, it doesn't matter what a law says. It doesn't matter what mainstream media says. It doesn't matter what, 250 years of case law says. The Constitution itself is the supreme law of the land. So if the Constitution doesn't provide authority for the government to do something, it's as simple as that. There's no Chevron deference needed. It is what it is. If it's not there, then the government doesn't have authority to do it. But under no circumstances, no matter what the topic is, Government never has rights. It's we the people that have the rights.
I'm really glad you're mentioning that, because so many people, even people on the good side of the fight, will say, well, hold on a minute. Only Congress has the right to make a gun control law. It's like, no, all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Among these, so many, many other rights, basically infinite rights. The government's only supposed to exist at the consent of the governed. So sure, if you look at any like Joe Blow senator, you could say Debbie Stabenow, she's a real beauty in a different kind of way, right? She as a person is endowed by her creator with just as many rights as all of us have in her individual personal capacity. But a United States senator doesn't have any rights over the people to tread on their natural God-given liberties. And I think that's an important delineation that you're making, because we keep on saying, well, only the president has the right to execute these laws, even if they're unconstitutional, and only the court has the right to interpret law and make case law, and only the legislator can write a gun control act. It's like, no. It says shall not be infringed, and the reason why is it's necessary to the security of a free state. So none of them have the right to do any of this, right?
Right. And the topic, I think, is made perfectly clear just by focusing on the U.S. Constitution. But when I was talking about some of these main issues in a different context on that California radio show last weekend, I brought up a piece of the Florida state constitution. And for those people who, are mad that I left Michigan, I am still fighting for Michigan. In fact, in case somebody hasn't seen it yet, I am still wearing my Detroit shirt here. So, I'm proud to be from Michigan, but I actually did grow up in Florida. So I lived for 12 years of my childhood, spending the school years down here. And it was the summer I was in the UP, which often still had snow in June. But anyway, I wanted to bring people to looking at some of their own state constitutions, though. And given that we currently are in Florida living here, Article 1 in the Michigan and Florida state constitutions both is called the Declaration of Rights. And aside from, by the way, for those of you who may not realize this, we don't have to look to a constitution to tell us what rights we have, because the Constitution doesn't give us our rights. Neither does the government. We have them. Some people, like, you mentioned that it was our natural rights. That's one way to look at it. They're God-given liberties. They're something that we have inherently by being born, by being human. And they're not something that are just artificially given to us by someone. But so we have all the rights that we have from our creator. Some of them we have chosen to specify in our state and federal constitutions for extra protection. But whether you're looking at the 9th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, or Article 1, Section 23 of the Michigan Constitution, or it's, Article 1, Section something else in the Florida State Constitution, it is in there. We have those unenumerated rights. We still keep them. We have retained, we're keeping all those rights that we did not list out in the constitutions. And the government's job is still to protect and secure those liberties, even if we don't, spell them out. But I find it interesting, the Florida State Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, it's entitled Basic Rights. All natural persons, female and male alike, are equal before the law and have inalienable rights, among which are the right to enjoy and defend life and liberty, to pursue happiness, to be rewarded for industry, and to acquire, possess, and protect property. That's a huge thing that I think, is just always missing from the conversation. But this spells it out, at least in the Florida State Constitution. And I'm sure they're not the only state that has this kind of language in there. But we have inalienable rights that we don't just have the right to those, to exercise those rights, but we have the right to enjoy and defend How on earth can we defend our rights? Well, one way is to have, a free press, right? To be able to hold government accountable, to get the word out, to get the truth out there, to have that pressure to do the right thing. One way is to consult our government officials, and have that open dialogue between the people and those who are serving the people. One way, we have the ability in a lot of states. There's procedures in the various state constitutions on how to amend or modify laws, or to amend the state constitution, for example. But we also have, I don't know, the ability to speak freely, right? But above all else, none of those are really going to even exist if you don't have the ability to directly physically defend yourself and your liberties, which is obviously done by having some sort of firearm or other method of bearing arms. I mean, that's why they didn't put in there the term for the particular gun or knife of the day when it was
You're
written.
right.
It's the concept of bearing arms, of whatever that looks like, whatever defense mechanism is needed, so that you, your home, your family, your children, your property, you are able to enjoy and defend your rights.
You're
So
right. And that comes down to what I've said many times. Look, I love all of the amendments. These are rights that weren't granted to us by government, but it's there to protect our natural God-given rights. But the Second Amendment I particularly like the most, because I believe that was put there not for if, because they knew it was going to happen, but for when they decided to tread on all of the rest. That's when the Second Amendment would come into play. And I think that's why it's just so important. And I like how you mentioned that, because sometimes we forget to just state the obvious. The anti-gun always say, well, hold on a minute. 1776, 1791, when the Bill of Rights was written, all they had is a musket. So you only have the right to a musket. It's like, no, you idiots. The founding fathers knew words. They knew what a musket was. If they said the right to bear a musket shall not be infringed, they would have written the word musket. But no, it says right to keep and bear arms. And the AR-15, the AK, the Glock pistol, that is the musket in the year 2022, right?
well, just don't forget my personal favorite, the AR-14. But anyway.
The AR-14 that he was going to take from our friend Jerry Wayne in Michigan, right?
Yeah. Oh, I haven't heard from him in so long. Yeah.
That's who it was. Christopher Gerard, thanks for the generous super chat, man. He just says thank you for fighting for our rights. Well, we all have to fight, and that's the important part. That's what we're talking about tonight, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and for those of you who are, I don't know, you have a kind of job that you could stick in some earbuds or something like that and just kind of listen and learn as your day goes on, or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you have unending laundry or something during the day, that kind of thing. I do my weekly show. I've actually started to do it at a regular time. I'm very proud of myself that my life has settled down enough that I could do that. And noon on Tuesdays, sometimes on YouTube when they don't put me in timeout, and otherwise on Rumble and currently our Facebook page. I go live every week, noon Eastern Standard Time, talking about a different concept each week. And this week, we're actually going to be breaking down the show, my weekly show, as I've called it. So some of the segments are actually just going to be their own little thing on different days, just to keep the show shorter. But mine aren't 2 hours every Friday. So I don't know why people are hating on me, because mine are less than that. But anyway, but if you have any kind of interest in learning more about some of these really basic, so obvious that they seem not real, but yet so basic and true concepts about the Constitution, about ways to get involved, about, any kind of freedom fighting resources that you need. That's literally some of the very segments of my episode that I do, of the newsletter I send out every week. So I'd love to help educate people, and just like you, I do the same thing. I guess donating my time, if you will, to try to educate people, because the biggest thing is we have to remember this is we the people. It's not we the attorneys or we the judges, or we the legislators, or whatever. So much of our freedom being impacted in so blatant and disgusting ways in the last 2 years, people are still saying, well, when is somebody going to do something about that? Or, why can't we get more attorneys to file lawsuits or do this or do that? Like you mentioned at the beginning, most attorneys are horrible, awful people. They're not smart. They don't know the Constitution. They're full of themselves. But even the good ones, they're either overworked or maybe their focus is on, say, family law or whatever. They're focusing on something that still needs to be done. But we can't leave it up to attorneys because it's not supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to have like all of us just take a back seat and be lazy about our involvement in government, and being a responsible citizen isn't just, showing up to vote at the polls and at the general election. And then if you're really lucky, you remember about the primary elections and, you might share a few social media posts about your favorite candidates. No, it's so much more than that. And whether somebody wants to be political or not, this isn't the time for us to, as a society, try to be all PC. We just need to lay out the truth in kindness and love. But we got to lay out the truth and we got to get involved, roll up our sleeves.
Yep.
People shouldn't be afraid. I don't know if you see this in the people that you talk with every week or not. But to me, it seems like so many people are afraid of that big bad government agency or big bad government official, whether it's a local school board or whether it's a township board or a city manager or, a city council member or somebody, a sheriff or a prosecuting attorney, anything, government. Yeah. These are people. They're fallible people. Yeah. And they most of the time, unfortunately, don't know the Constitution that they swore an oath to uphold, because, by the way, if they didn't, they're not lawfully in their position. Every single government official has to, by the Constitution, take that oath to support the Constitution. But we just need to feel more empowered as a people to challenge those officials or those agencies, to point out when they've gone wrong. And just have a little bit, I think, more confidence in being able to do that.
Look who just popped on to say hi, Jane Locke.
Wait a minute. You had your own nails painted and you didn't paint mine? What?
Your nails are painted. I just saw them.
Oh, well, yeah, you can't see them up close. They fade and it's like maybe once a month I might actually paint my nails. But Jane, she could be doing it every day for me now.
I love you, Jane. Nice to see you. Jane's awesome. So basically, the way I look at it, and look, I mean, here's the problem. If it's just me, if the ATF is here to confiscate my ghost gun or my brace, and I try to fight back by myself, there's going to be 12 guys with submachine guns, and I'm banned from even owning a machine gun, and I'd probably be dead within seconds. And that's why people are intimidated. However, if you truly look at it, I don't know. It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing all over again. We kind of allowed this to become this way because we just pawned off all of our duties, because it says it's your right, it's your duty to fend off a tyrannical government. That's what the founding fathers said. So like by us getting rid of our duty and being lazy on our duty, we kind of handed it off to those people because it was easier just to maybe vote once every 4 years or not vote at all. And this has been going on for a couple 100 years. So what do we do today besides just like jump off a cliff? Because I can see why people want to do that too. I mean, don't really do it, but you know what I'm saying.
What kind of depressing show is this going to be? I mean, it's already bad enough, and now we're adding that element. Yeah, no, it's something that I don't know. It's so funny because the conversations, when you first meet somebody, what are the things that you're in the back of your mind? You're like, oh, I shouldn't talk about that yet. It's politics. It's religion. It's, those, your position on any COVID stuff, it's all those things, right?
Yeah.
So you just, in your mind, you're like, oh, I think I might have a new friend or a new colleague or a new neighbor. Oh, I don't want them to be mad at me. So, I don't want there to be bad blood. I'm not going to talk about those forbidden topics. we need to have those discussions. We need to be able to have a robust debate on issues. I mean, it's that's why it's aside from the obvious other problems, when YouTube decided to put me in timeout in January, and with one of the videos that they tagged, it was actually a debate. It was a live televised debate between me and a super liberal attorney on Fox 2 Detroit. And there was a third party, Charlie, who's actually an attorney, and he's a media personality. He's been around for a long time, so he's the moderator, if you will. He's the one asking the questions, and he's the one that put on the debate in the first place. Called me up and said, "Hey, Katherine, will you come debate on this issue? I got to find a super liberal attorney to go on the other side and debate this." And I'm like, yeah, because that's what people need to hear. They need to hear dialogue. And so, but in this instance, mainstream social media decided that would be misinformation and we got to take it down. And how dare you have people hear both sides?
Yeah, when you mentioned like some of these verboten topics, okay, politics, religion. Here's the beauty of this country, though, what it was set up, right? We have the First Amendment, which protects religious liberty. When we say your rights are endowed by your creator, for me, it's the Christian God, and I'm not afraid to say that. But it doesn't have to be for you. Just as long as you believe that the former vice president did not create you, your rights are endowed by something greater than the government. So check, we don't all have to be the same religion. When we talk about politics, to me, this should go way above and beyond Democrats versus Republicans, because almost all Democrats are bad and almost all Republicans are actually pretty bad too, right? So as far as like, Mitch McConnell versus Chuck Schumer, no, like screw them both. When we say like politics, it should be something greater than that. Us getting back to this is what government should be by the consent of the governed. These are our natural rights. And it seems like people, regardless of what religion they are, regardless of what political party they vote for, should be able to have those conversations. Don't you agree?
Yeah. And sorry, you said something and it got me totally thinking on 12 different trains of thought. But, I'm sure you know of someone who I used to consider a good friend, State Representative Steve Johnson.
Okay, yeah. I've interviewed him and met him before.
Yeah, so he and I were both running as brand new candidates for state rep in neighboring districts back in 2015, 2016. And got to know him then. And he was pretty young, and I don't know if he's married now, but he wasn't married then, no kids, so just starting out life, basically. Had some military service under his belt, and that was about it. So good guy. And I don't know, just not a politician, not someone who's going to play the game by their rules. So at the same time, the person who actually initially asked me to run for office was Congressman Justin Amash. And back then it was something that in any conservative, really conservative circles, I could say, hey, Justin Amash endorsed me, and this is, he's the reason why I'm running for this, state rep position, and whatever. And then it would be this, I don't know, it's like a commonly understood type of position. Oh, okay, you align with liberty and freedom and values. And then somewhere along the way, now don't get me wrong, I still consider him a friend, and I still like a lot of what he stands for. But somewhere along the way, he seemed to get hung up on being super, hyper political in the other direction, everything against Trump, what Trump was doing, and it was all bad. And I'm like, okay, wait, but why are you only focusing on this? And he's in your own party, because he was still, Amash was still a Republican at that point, not an independent. So, there seemed to be kind of that pendulum swinging too far the other way, is I guess where my thought was. But yeah. So I guess it seems like in our society, though, I think people, if you're even talking about anything political, if you even have an opinion that you're voicing at all, it's being taken as you're way on the other side of the pendulum. You're nowhere in the middle. If you have an opinion, oh my goodness, you're just an ultra right or an ultra left. And I would just like people to be ultra Constitution.
Yes. And that should be above politics, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something about, the Republicans or the Democrats, screw them all. Yeah, by and large, most um, government officials, most congressmen, most state reps and state senators are just as crappy about knowing or even defending the Constitution as most lawyers and most judges. They've all let us down. They're all part of that system, and they're all not doing their part. So I don't know. I really just wish people would remember that more. Remember that those people are people. And when you call their office and you leave them messages and you send emails and you get to them through social media and you show up to open meetings and you're having your voice be heard in a respectful fashion, and you're telling them what the specific thing is that you think they're screwing up on, it does matter. It doesn't matter, a level of government, it's still going to matter to them. They're going to hear it. We're all human. Even the people, the toughest of shells, the people that are so high up on the, the political spectrum, or the, just a lot of money and prestige and power, they're still humans. So when they hear people, especially if it's this person, and then all of a sudden this one and this one and this one and this one and this one, and they're all saying the same thing, like, dude, read the Constitution. Where did you get that from? Why'd you write that letter? Why are you trying to go after this constitutionally protected liberty? Whatever the case is, it does matter. And people need to remember their voice. It is heard, even if they don't feel like it. Yeah. And there's no Staples easy button either. People just need to keep at it, keep in the fight for freedom, because it's not something that's just going to be won and over in a day.
Well, I remember something from about a year ago that ties into this. And thanks, Marco Polo, for the channel member chat. He says, thank you for a great informative stream. And I'm having a good time too, guys. I remember about a year ago with none other than the lovely Jane Locke. We went there and we sat on the other side in the crowd when you were an elected public official in Michigan and you were a trustee at that time. And members of the public were able to literally talk to you guys, look you straight in the eye, and you didn't have to necessarily agree with what every community member was saying that night. But trust me, you had to acknowledge that they had the authority over you because they were your constituents. They voted you in, and they could sure as heck vote you out. They could have recalled you. And that applied to everybody on that board that you were elected to. And I think that's something that we can use to encourage people, right? Like, I get it. You can't call the former vice president. And if you did, he'd say, I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true and national pressure. That's what he'd say to you, right? So, no, you can't talk to him, but you wouldn't want to. But if you start at local level government, what do you think? Is that a place that we, the people, can actually kind of like, not violent, but we can be assertive, like get in their face and tell them, you need to straighten up. You don't have our consent. We want to change. What do you think about that concept?
Yeah, I think the more local, really any level, I would say if you feel called to write emails to the White House, I mean, do it. But
of course,
the more people that someone is representing, the more constituents they have, the more effort you're going to have to take to get your voice heard. But it's not that it's not a worthy cause, whatever you feel being led to do. But yeah, definitely with the local government, my husband made a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request in Georgetown Township, which is Ottawa County, Michigan, West Michigan, to the board that I was serving on. And I don't remember all the specifics off the top of my head what started it, but there was an issue and there was a lot of nasty stuff going on. And I found out that he made the request when the rest of the board did. And it was by email from I think it was the township clerk or whomever, that said, hey, Mr. Henry, there's this FOIA request and he's requesting to have all the board communications and emails, et cetera, between this period of time over this particular topic. That was a heated debate at the time in our township board meetings. And man, when I found that out, I was so ticked because I knew they were going to blame me. I knew that I was going to be even though he's his own person,
Yep.
and he can do that, and he had every legal right to do that and see those communications. I knew I was going to get blamed. And sure enough, there I was getting blamed. And I was just astonished, though, at how stupid some of my fellow board members were. I mean, we were township trustees of the 7th largest township in all of Michigan. I mean,
Right.
over 50,000 people. And I'm sitting on this board with an individual who's literally saying that, my husband's request to see the information that's being sent out by board members on behalf of the township is somehow, it's like, it's criminal. How dare my husband make such a request and want to see that communication, because he shouldn't have to have that pressure. It's making him feel uncomfortable, to do his job, knowing that now at any moment somebody's going to file a request to see his communications that are being made on behalf of a public body. And I was just like, are you serious right now?
That shows you where we're at, that they had never even had this happen before. And by the way, I'm going to stick up for you. I was there that day, and I saw the look of astonishment on your face. You literally had no idea that Mike had done those FOIA requests. So, but it was just astonishing that these guys were all sitting there, elected public servants, because that's what they are. Politicians work for all of us. Remember that, guys. They're there to serve you, not the other way around. But these guys were like, oh my gosh. You mean stuff that we're doing on the government dime with our government emails can be requested and read by the people? Like, how dare you? No one's done this before, right?
Actually, the thing is, I found out, I think at the same meeting, that one of the other board members had in the past, she had done FOIA requests against, board members she didn't like. And she was a board member doing that. And I thought, well, she has a right to do that. I mean, all the information should be available. I mean, it's the public. That's interestingly enough, in that constitutional amendment that I had drafted, where we were getting hundreds of thousands of signatures across Michigan in 2020, that would have put into place right in the Michigan state constitution. All those kinds of communications would have to be done automatically, that far more things would have to go up on municipal websites, for example, without any FOIA having to be made, because and there basically shouldn't be costs for, if somebody's willing to come and get an email, not come and get it, but get an email with the information that they've requested, then why should they be charged? If there's a massive amount of records somebody is asking for, they should be able to get it, because we're the people, government works for us, and we're the ones being regulated by secret rules and regulations and those not so secret and everything in between. So it's so crazy how we've come to this point where we're just used to, well, the government gets to keep all of its secrets. It gets to have this secret set of rules that it's playing by and enforcing upon us, like with the ATF, and and we have to pay for information if we want it, and we're only given little bits, and we have to just take it as is, and all of these things, all the topics go back down to the government. Like you said, those government officials work for us. When I sat up on that township board, in that meeting and in many other meetings, I said, we work for you. We work for you. When we're a township official, when we're a city official or a county official, whoever, a government agency, we work for the people. So I don't have to agree with you. You can FOIA something of me or of whatever in this, all of this, the transactions happening here, and that's your right. Or, when people were mad that I was supporting the Michigan Vaccine Choice Float being in the, I think it was the Memorial Day Parade in Georgetown Township in probably 2021. I can't remember now. People were like disgusted that they were allowed to have that misinformation flow. Some people were just mad that, well, it's become political. They made it political, and how dare you let them in? And I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute. You guys don't get it. It's not that just because I agree with the position of the people that are on the float, or the person, with the organization, leading the organization, is a friend of mine. That has nothing to do with it. How about it was, you want your rainbow floating, you want your whatever. I mean, you each have your own positions on things. That's part of our, we have land of the free. We're allowed to have an expression of different opinions, and government officials aren't supposed to fight for or, support or defend or whatever, only the positions that they like or that they, personally agree with. No, when I was a public official serving as a Georgetown Township trustee, it was my job to make sure everyone had equal access to participate in that parade, regardless of what my position was on their political stance.
Yep.
And that's what, so many people just, they want to take politics out of everything, and we can't. It's a part of everything.
And when we say politics, it's just engaging in your civil duty of being an American. We don't mean politics like, again, you don't have to be a Democrat. You don't have to be a Republican. It's just called, it's your right and it's your duty. That's what this country was founded on. Now, here's something that's interesting, though. Back to the ATF again, right? So it's one thing if you elect somebody to office, or in other instances, just otherwise, right? Like just put in otherwise residing in the White House. But if somebody's in an elected position, you can look at them and you can go to the Georgetown Township meeting. You could go to the Michigan State Senate, the Idaho State Senate, wherever you guys are from, right? And you can talk to them. And even if they won't listen, you can vote for them. You could have a ballot initiative. There's different ways like this with actual lawmakers. But here's the problem with a bureaucrat. You don't know who they are. They're not elected. They appear to have zero accountability to the people. They're called career bureaucrats, where they get put in there and they're already told they're going to work there the rest of their life, no matter what. So this is what I've said to people in the past, and I want your opinion on this. We have a huge elephant. And how do you eat an elephant? I guess you just eat them one bite at a time. Where do we start chewing back and like getting rid of these people that wear like suits and dark glasses and they have guns and they have this lifetime appointment and you don't know who they are, but they're like making you scared to exercise your God-given rights? Where do we even start with this? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think we'd start with making sure we are actually educated on what our rights are. So often, and myself included, for example, the April 30th, 2020, that first day that I stood in front of a crowd live, standing on the steps of the Capitol and telling people, what was constitutional and what wasn't, and what the legislature should do that day and what they shouldn't, and what the governor had done wrong so far, etc. 22 or 23 minutes worth of telling people nonstop information in that regard. You would think that I was quite knowledgeable, and I considered myself to be, very, remotely knowledgeable anyway on those topics. But, fast forward a half an hour, and my husband and I had made our way into the hallway of the Michigan State Representatives. And, we're right outside the House chamber, and we're trying to, there's tons of people out there trying to get in, and they're not getting in. And, I see a problem. I saw a whole bunch of testosterone, right? There's, one female cop of the whole bunch on the law enforcement side. And then you have all the testosterone on the militia or, everyday Joe person side, right? And what do? Well, I'm also a mediator. So I run right to the issue, right in the middle, smack in the middle of it all. And I'm like trying to calm everybody down and I'm talking to the law enforcement guys. I'm talking to the redcoats behind law enforcement. I'm talking to, the people around me. And, at one point, there's a guy right next to me. He made it to national news. It's his picture where he's like, it looks like he's screaming right in the face of one of the state police officers. He actually wasn't at that moment. He was yelling, but he was yelling at a guy behind him about 12 feet who was in the red coat, because the guy in the red coat the day before had assaulted someone he knew, but it was actually a friend of mine, Audra Johnson, and two other friends of mine. And so that guy was actually, the photo that made national headlines of him was actually him yelling at the guy behind for assaulting three women the day before. But we're standing there, and I'm actually trying to get the guy to calm down, because there were points where he was still too aggressive to the cops that were in front of him. And, I'm trying to get him to chill out a little bit. And he's like, what do you mean? Now, mind you, this is the guy, same guy. When I do my speech, I heard, I was nervous as all get out. It was the first big public speech I've honestly ever done in my whole life. I mean, thousands of people. I was freaking out. And even this, I'm not really comfortable with, having people that are, online with us. It's still not something I'm, super comfortable with. But at any rate, I'm giving my speech, and there was a couple times where I heard this person who was right in the front just start yelling. He's yelling profanities and all. And I'm like, is he saying that about me? Is he reacting to what I'm pointing out about Whitmer? I mean, like, so I was kind of taken aback a little bit. At the end of my speech, though, I get down from the steps, and he goes, hey, he comes over to me. Hey, I just want to let you know, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm really upset about what the governor's doing, and yada, yada. And so I was like, oh, okay. He's like, so I don't want you to think that I was, I was being disrespectful, but I didn't want you to think I was like disrespecting what you had to say. I really loved what you had to say, blah, blah, blah. So that guy, you then fast forward, and we're, all in the outside the House chambers there. And I'm trying to get him to calm down. And he's like, well, yeah, what about all that good stuff you just said out there? Now what are you doing, when they're not letting us in to be able to see this session of the House? And I'm like, I'm trying to work on it, dude. And even in that moment, I was powerless, because I was telling the police, it was the state troopers, that it was not the right thing to do to keep us out. I was telling them that it was unconstitutional. I was telling them that if for nothing else, by the next day, by May 1st, 2020, it was for sure going to be illegal and unconstitutional and everything else, even if they didn't think that April 20 or April 30th, it was, illegal. So I was still having that conversation. I still had a lot of the information, but I tell you what, in that moment, I did not know that Michigan state constitution, I want to say, see, I still don't even have it memorized, which I should. But Article 4, Section 20, open meetings. The doors of each house shall be open unless the public security otherwise requires. It says it right in the Constitution for the state of Michigan. And I did not know that. As a constitutional attorney, most of what I've been working on revolved around, medical freedom and parental rights and things like that. Oh, you can hold it up if you'd like. So Mike wants to show everyone the picture of me talking to that guy that day, trying to calm him down.
I was there that day, guys, by the way.
Oh, that's funny.
I was in the building.
So then you might have heard me talk, because I was the one that ended up talking for a long time to people that day. I was explaining what the bills were doing, Senate Bill 858 that they voted on. And anyway, it was a whole... But I could have done better, because if I was informed enough, if I had readied myself for things that could have been, if I would have known Article 4, Section 20 of our state constitution says the doors have to be open, then I could have looked those guys in the eye and unequivocally said, right now, you're violating the Constitution that you swore an oath to uphold, and not just in some ambiguous way. How about in this way right here, regardless, Republican, Democrat, COVID, no COVID, mask, no mask, that's not the issue. This says you have to keep the doors open. So keep the doors open. I could have had a little bit better of an impact. So I tell you all that to say, it doesn't matter who you are. You can't expect attorneys that are going to fix everything, because most of them are not good. But even they don't know all the laws. Even they don't know all the constitutional provisions. I don't have the whole Constitution memorized. But I tell you what, I know this damn thing a lot better now than I did 2 years ago. And we all should.
And in other words, so of all the lawyers in the state of Michigan, you were right there in the front fighting, saying you have to let us in here to hold our government accountable. And I would guess there might be one or two attorneys maybe in the chat, maybe none. I don't know. But at the same time, people don't need to be attorneys. Like literally everyone that's watching right now, and you guys need to all remind your friends of this, your state constitution, the federal constitution, they're very easy to understand, and you don't have to be anybody special at all. You just have to have a good work ethic and be motivated. Get a couple friends, go to your township meeting, get your feet wet there, go to your state house, your state senate. I think that's our only chance right now. We have to kind of go over the head of the government, and we have to start doing some of the work ourselves, right?
Yeah, it is. In fact, if you want to, I saw something in the chat that kind of drew my mind somewhere else. But before I get to that, can you be at every single kind of meeting? No, even if you don't have a life, it's impossible to be at your local school board meetings and your DDA and your planning commission and your zoning board of appeals and your city council and your county commission and your, it's a lot. But get connected with people where you're in a group. So if, for example, you like medical freedom, maybe you didn't even think about it as a thing, but now you're like, oh yeah, now that everything's been in the news for the last 2 years and I see what they're doing, they're crazy. I want my own medical freedom. I want to be able to decide what I put in my own body. Well, then get connected with a group that, and at this point, I'm fairly confident in saying that in every state, there is a group, at least one, if not 20, that are advocating for your medical freedom. So if you can't make it to all those state legislative hearings on bills, being heard in different committees or whatever the case may be, if you partner with various groups that share your interests. Now, it might be an official organization like Michigan for Vaccine Choice, or maybe you and a group of people from your church or your neighborhood, maybe you guys get together, you have bonfires every Friday night after listening to Micah's show, and you guys talk about the issues that are important to you, the things that have been bothering you, and maybe you divide it up and you go, hey, you know what? I'm going to go on behalf of this group here, our neighborhood or whatever. I'm going to go talk to the school board at this week's meeting. And somebody else says, you know what? That's a great idea. And I have availability to go to the planning commission meeting at 4:00 this Monday. Mm-hmm. I could do that. And I could bring everybody's concerns that we've talked about tonight. And somebody else says, well, I like this restaurant over in Lansing, or Tallahassee or wherever you are. So I don't mind going into that legislative hearing. I don't really know what to ask. Do any of you have specific questions or points you would want me to get across? It's literally as simple as that. I mean, find 2, 3, 4 people or more that you align with on at least one topic, maybe more, and tag team. Make it something that you guys can work together, because then your voices will be heard. And then you'll feel like you have a voice more because you're exercising it more efficiently. And you're going to see the influence. I mean, shoot, long before any of the statewide stuff happened, I guess you could say the most that I became challenging of government wrongs on a direct, like face-to-face basis was when I was living in the city of Belding. And we had a city manager who was violating every single law possible, the city charter and our state constitution and state laws. I mean, stuff you just wouldn't believe. And I had somebody who brought me this FOIA requests, some documents, and some city council packets. And he had me read it. Emma, who I don't think has come in here tonight, but anyway, she's 8.5 now, but when she was just a baby. And he brought me these packets, and I'm like, well, I'm sitting in a chair nursing hours a day. Sure, I'll read through these. And of course, by the time I got to the end, I'm the kind of person, I don't sit around and bitch about stuff. I'm going to get stuff done. If I see something that needs to be fixed, I'm going to do something about it. And so I'm going to be upset if I can't. Well, I decided I was going to drag my butt down to the depot, they call it, in downtown Belding. Huge metropolis it is, 5,000 people. But anyway, I was going to go to that city council meeting and I was going to voice my concerns. And I was nervous because what did I know? I'm just was a new person to the town. I mean, my husband's the one that's been there his whole life, and his family. I just moved there. I'd been there, 2 years maybe at that point. Who did I know? What right did I have to call somebody to the carpet? No, I was going to do that though, because it was the right thing to do. And every week there were new things. And so oftentimes it was about this woman named Kim Orlick. I had never even met her. And I'm seeing what's in our city council packets. And I'm like, holy crap. Get this, Micah, totally unrelated to 2A, but you see government overreach and government abuse, and maybe some overlap with what the ATF is trying to do to people, scare them and abuse them and everything else.
Yeah.
This woman, she had been doing FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests for the city of Belding. She wanted to uncover some stuff. I don't even remember what the original thing was she was uncovering, but there was a problem. And it was related to money and government officials doing wrong. And anyway, so she kept doing these requests, and the city manager didn't want her doing the requests anymore. So she found out this woman had a civil judgment for about $1,100 up in like Sheboygan or something, and like at the bridge. And she contacted that law enforcement agency. It might have been just the city of Mackinac. She contacted them and said, hey, I see you have this civil judgment here, and there's a bench warrant issued because whatever reason. The woman had failed to appear for a civil case hearing back in the day. We have this woman, you can come and get her. Now, this agency looked at the file and they said, listen, this woman, it's about a debt. This woman owed like a credit card company $1,100. And it was a bench warrant issued because she failed to show up to court one day. It's out of a civil case, but the judgment is almost 10 years old and they haven't renewed the judgment. So in the next 2 months, the judgment is going to go away. They could never collect on it anymore anyway. So we're not coming to get her. So what did this woman do? This city manager who oversees the police department told the police, you're going to go pick this woman up and arrest her at 10 o'clock at night. Take her without any of her meds, any money, anything. You're going to drive her all the way up to the bridge and bring her there. So that's what they did. Dragged her out of her house in the middle of the night, brought her all the way up there. Didn't even tell her what they were taking her for. They get up there and the jail wouldn't take her. So what did they do? They left her there stranded in the middle of the night. She had to hitchhike all the way home. For those of you who don't know Michigan very well, I'll just say, so she was brought, this is Michigan. No, this is Michigan. She was here and she was brought here and we were living down here. I mean, Michigan's, take that back. She was brought here. She was brought all the way up.
That's like 600 miles.
It was insane. And so when I saw that, I was like, holy crap, you can't do that to people. I don't know what this woman is trying to uncover, if she's a conspiracy nut or not. That doesn't matter. You don't get to do that to people. So I started speaking out at meetings, and then she was doing more stuff. I mean, this woman is psycho. And so I would just go to each meeting and I would speak. And I eventually ended up suing her, which she then moved to federal district court thinking she was going to scare me, I guess. And I was like, bring it. And I had to argue with the federal court judge about my First Amendment rights. Because he said I wasn't allowed to speak to my city council members when my lawsuit was pending. And I was like, the hell I can't. I still have a First Amendment protection. Sorry. So anyway, the point is, even if you're, a mom nursing all day long and you're just finding out about stuff that you're reading on Facebook, or you're seeing government documents and something's upsetting you, you can go. You can be that one. The one. You don't have to have people there with you. You could be the one person that shows up, tell them exactly what the problem is, tell them exactly what it is that you want them to do different, even if it's just stop doing something.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then come back the next week or the month after that or whenever. You're not just somebody. You are somebody. You are a person and you have a voice. So we should never underestimate our own power to make change.
Right, and there's 100 million gun owners in this country, so let's just use some common sense here. The other side always likes to say common sense, this and that. Well, let's use some real common sense. If 100 million people that owned guns all said no, no matter what, we're not going to let the ATF do this, there's no way they could possibly get by with it. But too many people say, well, someone else is taking care of that. And look, we should be members of organizations. Gun Owners of America, an awesome organization. I just did an interview with them the other day on my channel. But guys, let's face it, 25 bucks a year, you should do that. It's well worth it. They spend tons of money in the courts. But do you really think, like, freedom isn't free? That's what the founding fathers said. Do you really think you can buy your freedom for 25 bucks a year? Probably not. And I think that's something we should all start thinking about. You probably actually need to get out there and do it, because if you don't, they're just going to keep doing their thing. And this would apply to local cases like Katherine talked about. And it also applies to the ATF. If 100 million people said no, they'd have to stop. Thanks for the super chat and for being a channel member, Alden Davis. I appreciate it, man. He said 2A EDU for Prez 2024.
Hey, can I be your vice president?
I don't think we have enough big lobbying money where we wouldn't let ourselves get bought up enough to run, but
hey, I live in Florida now. I'll head a few hours south and try to have some conversations with Trump and maybe hit DeSantis along the way and be like, hey, sorry guys, but we're going to be the new thing. We need you to back us. We got this.
I think we got some voters. Thanks for the super chat, Marco Polo, and for being a channel member. And no problem. He's talking about one of the perks of joining my locals, guys. There's stuff I can share there that I can't hear. So make sure you check locals out. I want to put something on the screen real quick to show you just how egregious this actually is. This is literally gets to be crazy. What's happening, White Space Marines? I'm going to share a tab on my screen, and we don't need to read this whole letter, but this is literally like, this is one of those statements that requires the listener to literally be dumber than the speaker. And in my opinion, we should all be insulted that they're even telling us this. So let me pop this up here. All right, let me come over and see how this looks. I think you guys can see that for the most part. Now, I don't have to read much of this to know how hypocritical this is. So they're going to go through, and this is this new ruling that they've made. This was the backdoor one where just this letter showed up to all the gun shops in the country the other day. This didn't go through the Administrative Procedures Act. They just declared, this certain trigger is a machine gun no matter what. Okay.
Hey, Micah, before you go on, can you zoom in a little bit? Because I have a pretty big screen and it is very tiny.
Okay, let me see what I can do here. I have it on another screen. That helps. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. So they're basically saying this goes back to this Chevron deference. They think they can interpret an ambiguity of the law. We've been talking all night how they actually can't. The only reason why they can is because, I hate to say it, we're letting them. So they go and they say both the National Firearms Act and Gun Control Act regulate machine guns. Quote, machine gun is defined under 26 USC 5845B, blah, blah, blah. So these are very specific statutes, subsections of statutes. This is, although it's unconstitutional, this is the law, right? So they go through here and they basically say any weapon which shoots is designed to shoot or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. And that's what we need to focus on. The function of a trigger. Now, a trigger has multiple functions. When you pull it, it sets, it fires the round normally, and then there's the reset function. Well, we have triggers that actually fire on the reset. Some fire when you pull them, some fire with both, but they're very specific by a single function of the trigger. Now we're going to go right down here. We only need to go 2 sentences, and the ATF says, ATF's examination found that some forced reset trigger devices allow a firearm to automatically expel more than one shot with a single continuous pull of the trigger. So hold on a minute. They're citing a law that clearly states function, and they're spelling out the law for us. They come right down, and this is like the magician's trick. Now they're changing the word function with pull. And actually, pull and function have 2 totally different meanings in this case. So Do you see what they literally just did? Like, what do you think about that?
Do you I don't know. Are you asking me? Are you asking your
Well, I'm just kind of asking for your opinion, and you don't need to know the intricacies of guns really to answer this. The law clearly states, as cited, by a single function of the trigger. Now the ATF says we're going to deem all these people felons, 10 years in prison, $250,000 fine, because they're saying it's with a continuous pull of the trigger. They've literally just changed the words of the statute right there.
right. Well, yeah, I just wanted to make sure you weren't asking your followers instead of me, and then I opened my big mouth. But so to me, that's again, that's like you mentioned, like we're both talking about earlier, that you have, if there's something in the law, then you have an administrative agency that is supposed to, assuming it's a constitutional law, which it isn't anyway, but we're going to assume for the sake of argument that it is, then they have to follow the law as it's written. They can't just change it or modify it or interpret it. So if they think it's unclear and they're trying to provide clarification, I would argue that they then have the duty to do something to get that law just set aside, because you can't just add to it after the fact. You can't modify it as you see fit, whether you're in the judicial branch and you're on the, you're a justice on the Supreme Court, or whether you're in, the executive branch or, one of these administrative agencies. Government officials have to swear an oath to uphold and support the Constitution and any laws that go along with and follow the Constitution. So if you see that there is a problem with a law and that there's some sort of ambiguity, then you have a duty to, I don't know, figure out how to fight for it being gone. Because especially if it's in your purview, if it's an ATF related statute we're talking about and you're in the ATF, instead of going down the rabbit hole of, well, I think it's an ambiguity, there's an ambiguity here, so I'm going to clear it up and I'm going to provide another layer of rule and regulation that you have to follow as the people. No, that's not your job. Your job then would be, oh crap, this is bad. There's, some ambiguity. Who knows what it really means? Then you should either lobby Congress to have it corrected so that it's clear if that seems like it's an appropriate situation. Or better yet, say, this is not constitutional as it is. There's no due process. How could there be equal protection of the law if there's, no clear application of the law, if there's something truly ambiguous about it? But then again, you're not a constitutional office anyway if your entire agency exists without having that authority being granted in the Constitution for it to exist. So I don't know. I mean, this is just another one of those things, if they can't just go changing the law as they see fit. No one can just change the law as they see fit. It takes all of Congress.
I think I heard you say something that was pretty smart that people don't talk about much. So hold on a minute. We have to have a bunch of presuppositions here because all gun control laws are unconstitutional. The ATF's unconstitutional. But just humor us here, guys that are listening. Assuming they all are to even get to this point, if a law was ambiguous and nobody knew what it meant, with them being part of the executive branch law enforcement, I think I heard you say they should just say, hey, we can't even enforce this law, because if it's so confusing, no one knows what it means. How is it even a valid law that's enforceable to begin with? Is that kind of what you said?
That's exactly what I said. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one more thing. We talked about the APA, and I remember when I was on the phone with you a week ago and I was on my way down south, you're like, oh, brother, the APA, like, that's just like cringeworthy for someone who loves the Constitution. But that's the Administrative Procedures Act. So, like, let's just say this. We want to paint all of the walls of this particular government agency gray instead of white, and it needs painted. You could put out an order and say this because you're regulating stuff within how the office works of the ATF. Okay. Or we're going to have Maxwell House coffee now in the break room because we got a better contract than Folgers. Okay. Now they would buy the most expensive, but humor me, guys. But
Yep.
Chevron deference in and of itself, even within that court ruling, which I know what you think of case law, that's unconstitutional too. But even within all that, Chevron deference was only supposed to be with an administrative agency. It wasn't supposed to be criminal. None of these agencies are supposed to govern the people. But look at what's right here further in this letter. And this is just what's making us go nuts. Under 26 USC, any person who violates or fails to comply with the provisions of the NFA may be fined up to $10,000 per violation and is subject to imprisonment for a term of up to 10 years. So, like, these are very criminal accusations and threats in here. But here's the kicker. The NFA that they cite that gives you the penalty of the $10,000, 10 years in prison, right? When we scroll back up in the document, this is literally just insane. It says a single function of the trigger. Now the ETF comes down and says due to their administrative rulemaking abilities, they change the word function to pull, and then right down to where I just said. Now they're threatening you with 10 years in prison. Like, you see what's actually going on here? How crazy it is?
Yeah, and the thing is, that's exactly what was happening with enforcement of executive orders or MDHHS orders or things that were similar in other states. But in Michigan, that's what we saw when you had, executive orders didn't have, basically the law that applied in that case, the 1945 or the 1976 laws that supposedly allowed those emergency orders.
Yep.
They essentially said if you violate one of these orders, then you're, guilty of a criminal offense and you can have jail time and fines and all that other fun stuff. And that it's just so bizarre that we would, whether it's ATF, whether it's a governor with an executive order, none of those things, they're not laws. So why is it that, whether the statute actually gives that kind of penalty for violating one of these non-laws laws, or whether it doesn't, and they think it does. I mean, either way, it's bad, because why would anyone ever think that it's okay for these other agencies or officials to be doing this stuff? I mean, it's not the position of the ATF to go rewriting laws. I mean,
that's right.
How to make laws 101. I mean, you would think at this point, every fourth grader in the United States would know that.
No, that's true. And somebody just said the word tyrannical government. That's actually true, because a tyrant, it's usually in an oppressive way, but that's somebody actually ruling over people outside of the rule of law. And that's truly what's going on here. They're breaking the law while trying to threaten you with the strong arm of the law for just exercising your natural rights. And I think we all need to remember that. And you guys need to, in my opinion, like Catherine said earlier, I know it's tough. And you guys all know your friends and family better than I do. So do it in your own unique way. But we need to stop being afraid of this. If all 100 million gun owners knew that, look, these are our inalienable rights. Congress can't make law, or Congress can make law, but even Congress can't make laws that violate the Constitution. I think we could actually get somewhere. So I really do believe that it's our job to start literally telling as many people as we can what's going on and get organized, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can't underestimate. I mean, and even though I'm a lawyer, you'd think I'm keeping up to date on all the laws. Our dumbass officials are making so many laws all the time that you can't possibly they don't even know all the laws that they're signing into the books, let alone the ones that were put into place the session before or the session before that or 10 years before that. So don't feel bad if you feel like it's too overwhelming to keep up on things. But, and I don't know how I made it on the Florida NRA's email list, but whatever. I get their emails and then I'm like, oh, like I learned when the Florida legislature was actually done in its normal session because the NRA sent me an email about it. Mm-hmm. I'm still fairly new down here. I'm used to the Michigan legislature trying to rule our lives 24/7 all year long, basically. So The fact that, they're done for 2022 already, I'm like, wait, what?
And they still didn't pass constitutional carry, which that's hyperbolic in and of itself. Like, look, guys, congratulations to all the states that got constitutional carry, but you should not have to pass a law that states you have the government's permission for constitutional carry, because you already have that right. It's an unalienable right, and the government only exists to protect your right to keep and bear arms. So by passing constitutional carry laws, it just shows you how crappy it is. That's actually backwards of what it should be, because you don't need a law that says, oh, you're allowed to exercise your rights because we said so, right?
Yes, but the way that it could make sense is if the legislation for any state that's passing constitutional carry as a law is if the law is actually geared towards what the punishment is to any government official, law enforcement officer, whatever, who is trying to squash your God-given liberties, your natural rights to bear arms in that case, or whatever it may be, that instead of having a law that purports to give you the right to carry a firearm, for example, it is a law that's acknowledging we know you already have that right. So we are making it clear for those of you government officials who want to deny somebody's natural rights,
right,
that you're going to have this punishment if you try to do that in any way. That would be a way you could pass constitutional carry as a law and have it make sense. But unfortunately, our legislature doesn't think like that.
No, that's really smart, because that goes back to the way I understand the founding documents that are pretty clear that the government was only instituted among men to protect our natural rights. So I agree with you. That would be a great, we'll just call it constitutional carry law, if it said, look, the people of the state of whatever have this right. Anybody that, literally any oath breaker that tries to tread on that government official, whether it's a police officer, a congressman, a city councilwoman, as soon as they tread on it, they get imprisonment up to such and such, fines up to such and such, right?
Yep. Yeah, and quite frankly, it is already a federal statute, but it's something that I feel like should be a little bit more clearly explained for the people, but for those government officials. Like, here, this is a law explaining that any government official is going to be in trouble big time for reals if you try to squash any of our natural rights. And this is what it's going to look like. This is the procedure, and maybe spelling out. So for example, I happened across, my dad sent me, what was it? Audit, the channel on YouTube that talks about various things. And it was,
I watch them.
The video that my dad sent me was where, they were there for some other they're in Michigan for some other reason. And then this, it became this whole big thing where some third party decides he doesn't like being videotaped. So he calls the cops, and the cops come, and this dude is like just so full of testosterone as an officer, as a sergeant, that it's just disturbing. But at any rate, uses excessive force a couple of times, and just does a whole bunch of things this man should never be doing in being employed by the government and representing the people in any capacity. But so the individuals that were wronged in this situation, they went to the police station right then and there, and they said, okay, well, we want to file a complaint against you guys for what you just did. And they refused to allow them to file the complaint. That kind of thing's not okay. We have to, if we're going to make a law, make it a law, not just some sort of policy. Like then the video was talking about the city of Detroit and Ann Arbor, that their police departments have written policies posted right on their website that tell you how you're allowed to, make official complaints against anyone in the police department, that kind of thing. That should be a given, that if if somebody's going to try to violate your rights to carry openly or whatever the case may be, that there is something that's very explicit, it's very open and obvious, and it exists at the state level, it exists at the local level, it exists at the federal level, and it's very reachable, and it's, you know, very clear that anyone has standing, which is usually the thing that keeps people out of the court from pursuing some of these, you know, issues. But hey, if this government official screwed you over and went outside of the bounds of what they were allowed to do per the Constitution, you have a right to bring them into court to have to answer for that. And you can pursue criminal charges. You don't have to wait for the prosecuting attorney's office to handle it. You could do it yourself if you want to. You could hire an attorney to do it for you. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we need to see in laws. And maybe it sounds like laughable, but that's what we really need to see, because our government is like so far up on this pedestal that nobody can touch them, no matter what, you know, level or agency or whatever. And those are the kinds of laws we really need to see when it comes to passing laws that are securing our freedom. But
yeah, I agree with that. And Gort, thanks for the chat and being a channel member. He said, and we're talking about the arm braces, guys. And look, all of this stuff the ATF's doing right now, it all ties into the same thing. And that's what this conversation's about, is just to offer you guys some insight and encouragement on what we're going to have to do just to take our country back. Because whether it was them saying you don't have the right to breathe fresh air, choose what goes in your body, how your kids can go to school, pistol braces, homemade firearms, triggers, like, again, this is all really the same thing. And Gort says, so 40 million law-abiding Americans spend their hard-earned money to buy legal AR-15 pistols with braces, because the ATF has written like 3 official memos over the last few years saying perfectly legal, not a problem. We spent our hard-earned money on these, and now they're literally saying, just on a whim, we don't like them anymore. Destroy it or pay a fee or end up on a confiscation list. And yeah, that's how emboldened they've become lately. It's literally that simple.
I see there's a lot of comments about a section of federal statute, but people are really focusing on the wrong one. And I don't know why so many people do it. It's not just the people that are commenting on this video, but people for the last 2 years I've heard comment on the wrong one. People are talking about 18 U.S.C. section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. The problem is that's totally irrelevant to anything. If anybody reads the law, it's not relevant, because it's talking about deprivation of rights based on the basis of, you know, race, or I don't remember what the other protected classes are that are talked about, but it's a discrimination case is what that is.
Right.
And that's not what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about, you know, this isn't even talking about medical freedom or any religious implications, those kinds of things. We're talking about a pure Second Amendment related issue. We need to focus on 18 U.S.C. section 241, because that doesn't talk about, you know, them trying to squash our God-given liberties in a discriminatory fashion. It's just saying they can't do it at all. And
who's supposed to enforce that?
Well, yeah. So people are asking who's supposed to enforce that, and that's the hard. I mean, technically speaking, it would be, oh my gosh, this late on a Friday night, none of my
I guess
words.
the DA should be filing suit against people, right?
Attorneys. Lawyers.
Well, no, yes, but it's supposed to, any criminal case is supposed to be the prosecuting attorney, but I just can't think of anyway. It was Barr's office under Trump.
The Attorney General's office.
Yes.
Yeah, but he's not going to. So attorneys are supposed to step up and be bringing these lawsuits.
Well, but procedurally, I don't know what the expectation is supposed to really be in the absence of a prosecutor not doing their job.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think in different scenarios, it could look different. It might even be, well, yeah. So it's, for example, there's in some cases, there's stuff in Michigan, for example, that I was talking about with some people a year and a half ago, and we've just had so much going on. We haven't had a chance to pursue it much, but doing a writ of mandamus or quorendo, I can't even talk today. That essentially it's something where you're saying that there's this government official that's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they're doing something that they're not allowed to be doing. and we want them brought to court to answer for this, then you essentially give the notice to your prosecuting attorney, like, hey, we want this handled. Are you going to take it on? Are you going to handle this? Are you going to pursue this and bring them into court? And if they choose not to do anything with it, you have the right as a citizen then to go to the judge and say, hey, the prosecutor's not doing their job, so we need you to give us the permission to essentially jump in as prosecutor and prosecute this government official. It's something that's not normally done, but it is something that's written into, there's a procedure written right into Michigan court procedures, court rules, and the law. So, you know, the procedure of exactly how you would do that might be different. It might be going after prosecutors for not doing their job, or, you know, it might be getting to leapfrog the prosecutor with special permission from the court to act as the prosecutor and file those cases yourself. It might be filing a civil claim. There's all kinds of different ways. So off the top of my head, I don't know. Each situation would be different to, you know, who the parties were and what the legal, you know, requirement was involved to see which court or what procedure should be used. But there is something you can do if nobody else is going to do it.
Right.
So, and keep in mind too, that if you're told, no, you can't, you don't have standing or whatever the case may be, there may be another procedure you're supposed to use, but a lot of times judges get it wrong. They just get it wrong. And people need to remember that judges are not the end all be all for what a law says. They think they are, but they're not.
And ultimately, the ultimate law of the land is supposed to be the people defending the Constitution. Because like we kind of started off tonight, and I want to bring this back up again for encouragement. The Second Amendment, it's actually interesting because none of the amendments grant us rights, guys. This is literally forbidding the government from treading on our natural rights. We always have to remember that. But most of them tell you what? They tell you what that your acknowledged rights are, that the government acknowledges and protects. But the Second Amendment is actually very interesting because, like Katherine said earlier, it tells you why. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. So that's why the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And don't forget about that, guys. Like, the fact that we still have our guns is probably the reason why they're not even getting worse. And I know it seems like it can't get worse, but things can get worse. That's why we can literally never, ever, ever give up our guns, right?
Yeah.
A couple chats here I wanted to catch up on. Band Talk earlier. Shout out to your channel, man. He has a great channel, guys. He talks about all kinds of cool stuff. So check his channel out. And he says, that's not testosterone. That's a small wee-wee. Well, I would note in today's
talking about that comment comes from
the cop earlier you said that had too much testosterone, right?
Oh,
I would note in the year 2022, there's actually probably women cops that have too much testosterone too, if you know what I'm saying. That identify as women, right?
Well, I hear cops and too much testosterone, and I think of November 3rd, 2020 in Allegan County, Layton Township parking lot. But that's just my own personal case where freedom has been forgotten.
Is that still on your YouTube channel?
Yeah. And right at restorefreedomkh.com, it's that video. We're going to clean up our website. Hopefully within the next week, have a much better, more streamlined website. But it's the video right on the main page showing what happened and how I was arrested for being an attorney, representing people who are lawfully exercising their First Amendment protected rights. And lucky for me, I was this close to bringing my gun with me that day and carrying, but I decided not to. I think I just forgot about it because I was trying to pack up all the laws and get my kid packed up and get down there to talk to this deputy about what was going on. And I can only think that, you know, if I had shown up with my gun that day, that they would have done something even worse, even more terrible than what they did. You know, the least of which could have been somehow ruined or confiscated my gun, and it would be, you know, years before I get it back. But definitely could be much worse than that. The fact that they're claiming they had any right to physically abuse me means that they probably would have tried to justify shooting me
Probably.
or something like that. So
guys, if you want to check out, we're almost at 2 hours. So if you guys want to check out Katherine's YouTube channel, I already have it in the description here. As soon as we're done live and this renders into a video, I'm going to put her website and her channel again in the pinned comment, so you guys can check out she's putting consistent videos up now. If you want to see a rather dramatic scene of her literally getting arrested, standing up for clients' First Amendment rights, that's on her YouTube channel, right? And do I have any more chats here, Linda? Thank you for the super sticker, Mike. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. I can't see it on StreamYard here, but I really appreciate all the way you guys support. And for all of you who just for some reason haven't heard yet, I do a weekly stream on Locals. That's a different site. It's censorship free. And I'm going to be streaming over there tomorrow night, which is Saturday night. And we can touch guns while we're live and all kinds of cool stuff. So I hope to see more of you guys there. Geez, oh, Pete, we went in full circle on this, but I think we talked a lot about fundamental God-given rights tonight, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot discussed.
Did you have anything else, like real quick with the topic, or anything you wanted to shout out, or before we close here?
Yeah, just for anybody that might be on now that wasn't on a little bit ago, I am doing my weekly show at noon on Tuesdays. I go live on Rumble and my Facebook page, Restore Freedom with Katherine Henry, but also when YouTube feels like allowing me to do my live, I go live on my YouTube channel as well. I'll just Restore Freedom. If you Google that, you'll find me in any of those. But, we talk about these kinds of issues. We talk about, your right to be on different kinds of property without being trespassed, what different court cases from the Supreme Court mean, different bills to watch in different state legislatures. There's always at least 3 freedom fighting tools I give to you each week. One way to get involved each week, a little biblical insight, 1 or 2, maybe 3 passages on what God's word is for the freedom fight that week. I mean, just encouraging helpful, practical tools to be able to fight for your freedom. So, we'd love to have people over there. And starting this week, we're going to do the show a little differently. That I'm hoping we'll keep Tuesday's show at noon a little bit shorter. But I shouldn't feel too bad because it doesn't ever go 2 hours. but mine's not as amusing and entertaining as a 2A channel would be. But no, I'd love to have you guys over there and sign up for the newsletter if you're someone that wants to see kind of like a cheat sheet of the week, topics we've talked about, links to videos, different events, that kind of thing. In fact, I'm just now getting back into doing my newsletter. And when I sent it out, totally forgot to tell people to check out your channel this week and what we'd be talking about. So shoot. But I'll tell them in the newsletter that'll come out this weekend, hey, by the way, guys, go check out Micah's channel and see what was talked about. But anyway, so if you guys can support in any of that, that would be great. And just like all those really cool 2A stickers that are behind him there, we have Restore Freedom window decals and Restore Freedom car magnets. We have a few t-shirts and things like that left. So if you want to show your support in any way, shape, or form like that, we just sell them at cost. And the Postal Service keeps raising the cost of things on me. So it's not me trying to make money, me just trying not to go totally broke doing this work for free.
Oh, trust me, I know how that goes. Dude, I'm getting tons of compliments. Like the chat's just rolling through saying we hit it out of the park tonight. Great conversation. And look, guys, we didn't even focus too heavy on guns tonight, but really guns aren't the issue. They're an inanimate object. And literally, I know I say this every week, but I'm going to say it again. When the country was literally formed, First Continental Congress, Ben Franklin was asked by a woman. She said, sir, do we have a monarchy or a republic? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. And that wasn't just that lady back then. That's literally you right now. We have a republic if you can keep it. And that's what we need to do right now. Because if we lose this country and it goes straight to communism, we're literally never, ever, ever going to get it back. So I just want all of you guys to be encouraged. Go check out Katherine's stuff. She offers lots of encouragement. She's very smart. She's a very kind person. She's my friend. And I'm going to be on here doing whatever I can too. So with that, I can't wait to see you guys again next week on here or tomorrow night on Locals.
And thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure getting to talk about this very important topic.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been too long, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody for being so welcoming to have me on your normal Friday night, sharing your 2A show with me. So,
well, they had a really good time. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.